So today we will be looking at few topics around detecting indicators and also looking at some case studies through simulations. Okay. Just to recap what we have covered so far, try understand the kind of malware that we have, how to understand whether the malware is a virus, worms, and so on. Try understand some of the case studies, looking at case studies to understand why APT type of attacks are more popular these days, what type of characteristics they have, how they can bypass IDS, and what kind of impact, adverse impact they can create. Yeah, so we have to try to look at some of the case studies and get a sense out of it. We also look at around the solutions in terms of how you apply encryptions, what is integrity, and so on. Also look at some understanding assets, cyber physical assets, how you derive critical assets, critical paths in the system. How do you model attacks, understand its impact on the physical systems, and so on. Now today we will be looking, before I get into this, are there any questions? What we have gone so far? Okay, so what we will be looking today is indicators of compromise, right? Now, while we are discussing this, we are also kind of try understand how this particular topic or technology is different in terms of applying in IT versus OT. Yeah. What are the challenges in OT that are not there in IT system? So indicators of compromise, we call it IoC, right? Indicator of compromise, simply when a system is under attack, if there's a malware in the system, and so on, we would like to understand what are the indicators that can help us determine that system is compromised, right? When systems start misbehaving, the pattern seems to be unusual or deviated from the original or normal scenario, it seems to be something is not right. Yeah? The kind of quantities or the magnitudes we should be receiving seems to be too low, too high, or receiving too many requests. Yeah? Or some in the system, system files have been corrupted or moved from some other locations and things like that. In IT system, indicator of compromise mostly what can go wrong. If someone is attacking your IT system, mostly it's about hacking a device or stealing the data. Now hacking the device, mostly it's a workstation, yeah? Or it could be a server. Workstation generally doesn't have any data out of it, but the whole point of getting into workstation is it possible to get into the system through one of the workstations, right? So as we discussed, like attackers always find easiest way to get into the system. Yeah, if there's a server, we understand the server might have some level of security, which is not easy to crack. So you need to be a bit technical in order to get into this. On the other hand, if there are people who are not cybersecurity expert or don't really understand cybersecurity, we can send them emails, messages, some kind of phishing and asking them to click on links and things like that. So the whole point is they want to inject a malware in their system. This will help them to get into the system. So even if you have a system which is technically really secure and your people are not trained, you still have high risk that attacker can get into the system through that. So in IT system, mostly we are talking about data breaches. Yeah? It's all about you are collecting data, sending data over the network. Your data could be compromised, could be So there are a couple of attacks like impersonation, eavesdropping, and so on. But mostly it's about the data, right? So when we say data, how could it happen? Maybe the way you are storing your data. So companies generally store data in their servers or data centers. And in order to access your, again, in what format you are storing the data. Earlier it used to be stored in a plain text, but now people are thinking, what if I store it in encrypted form rather than normal form? So even if my data is leaked, still in encrypted form. No one can decrypt it unless they have the key. One of the reasons of data breach is unauthorized access. What is unauthorized access? Right, without permission. Someone who doesn't have permission for access right, access that data in some way. Now sometimes attackers copy the data, and sometimes they steal the data. So if there's any modification over data, possibly you will get one of the compromise, one of the indicators says data has been changed, and so on. But sometimes they just copy the data, which is a passive attack. And it's hard to understand whether data is compromised or not. Yeah. Now, in an IT enterprise, what are the different ways? Let's say access. Have you studied access control? So, what are the different ways or models through that we can design a system for users to access different resources? So basically, we had 4 broad models, the number of models. I'll just talk about 4 main models. One of them, just trying to understand how do we fix this unauthorized access. One thing is you just encrypt everything. Whoever holds the key should be able to decrypt it. Yeah, even if people having access to the encrypted data, they can't decrypt it. Right? But then again, if we are talking about very large data, encryption and decryption is all about costing and time. Yeah. And sometimes we also want to protect resources, not just data. Yeah, I want someone out of you, maybe 1 or 2 and 3 people should be able to access this device, for example, or this room, for example. Right? So in that sense, we need to restrict access of individual. Or I can give access to the group. Yeah? Student from computer science should be able to have access to this lab. Student from mechanical, they can't get into this. Right? So sometimes we also think about permissions in a group level. And now the 4 model I'm talking about, the very first is called discretionary access control, which is the very basic model, which says, as its name says, it's the discretion of the owner. If I have a laptop, I have a device, I will decide who will access it. Yeah? If you're my friend, I might give you the access. So it's completely up to me to decide who will have access to on this resource. Right? And generally, it's a very simplistic thing. Generally, we don't really practice this in an organization. It's an individual thing where yeah. Second comes mandatory access control. Now, mandatory access control says for some resources, you can customize it, you can access it, but for some resources, you are forced to do something. For example, your operating system. There are system files. Sometimes it doesn't allow you to copy the file or move that file. If you go to program files and so on, it will not allow you to make changes to those files. Right? And things like that. So you have a user space, you have a system space there. System space, all the system files, installation, everything. By user space, you can edit file, create file, whatever. Right? So mandatory access control decide the user cannot access this, only the system can access it. Yeah? You can create different user accounts who can access this device, but their own individual accounts, own their individual space. So if you're logging in a device through different account, you won't have access to certain resources or certain files, for example. Yeah. The third type is called role-based access control. So let's say let's take example of this university. We have different people of different roles. We got director of the institute, we have academic dean, dean affairs, maybe dean R&D, professors, associate professors, assistant professors, postdoc, PhD, MTech, BTech, and so on. Yeah. So these are the user roles, and I can decide based on the user roles who can access individual resources in what capacity. Yeah. When I say individual roles, I can give one specific role to a group of users. Right? If you belong to computer science faculty, if you are a professor, you might have access to something. Students might not have access to those things. Right? Anyone joins new, if there's a new faculty joins, that belongs to that group. So he automatically got those rights as a professor. If a new student comes in, automatically got rights as a student. Right? So we have defined the boundary in terms of roles. And as long as people comes and join groups, they have these exactly same rights as the other people have in the group. Right? And the last one is called attribute-based access control. Now, one of the problem with, so what is the problem in role-based access control? I mean, there's no problem, but then what are the challenges? What happens in an enterprise, generally people have multiple roles. Yeah? There's a professor who is also a dean, maybe. Right? Sometimes people belong to different departments. Maybe they're teaching computer science, but they're also teaching electrical, or they're head of computer center, and so on. Yes? Students might be, somebody is also kind of representing some student bodies, student groups, they're head of XYZ. So sometimes people, similarly in the companies, in corporate world, people have, so companies have different projects. A person who is, let's say, program lead in one project might be in a different role in another project. Right? Let's say somebody is security officer, but there's a project on cybersecurity, and they say, oh, you head it, you lead it. So that person becomes the lead of that project. So in one role, he's the lead of the project, but on the other hand, he's also a security officer. Now, sometimes when people have multiple roles, they have extra permissions. So you have all the rights as you are head of project. So whatever rights we want to give to as a head of projects, the person has. But he's also security officer, so whatever other roles as a security officer, he has all those roles. Right? Now, sometimes they complement, which is okay as long as it doesn't harm. But sometimes it contradict. Yeah, they might having those resources that they can misuse for their other roles to get the benefit to the other roles. Yeah. Also, when there are limited number of users, role-based system are okay, where people might have multiple roles to play. But when we have very large systems, it becomes difficult. Once the project is finished, what will happen? Then you go back to security officer. You are not anymore lead of the project, right? But what you forget to revoke those rights, person can still access it, isn't it? So in that capacity, we have attributes-based access control, which says rather than think about role, think about the attribute. Right? There's a person. If he is a security officer, you give them an attribute. Does he belong to security side of it? Yes, you give them. Is he administrator? Give extra right? And then you revoke those attributes simply, rather than the whole role, or rather than revoking everything from it. So for you give default rights to everyone, some rights which are kind of common, and as soon as they change different roles, you attach those attributes to them so that they get additional permission. Once the role is done, you take that, simply remove the attribute from the database. Right? For example, did you guys study database? SQL and yeah, so you know how does it work. So you can simply match those things. Right? Where this equals to this. So that condition is true, you person automatically gets right. If you need to revoke, you just need to run one command. Right? And that will solve this rather than setting up or resetting up the whole thing. And you can scale it up as long as you need it. Right. So that's all about IT system. Now how it's different in OT system. So it's a OT system is not just about data. It's about disruption of two physical processes and potential safety hazards. Right? So as we said, even if your data is corrupted, change a bit, it can still work for us, for the physical system, as long as we pass the data to SCADA system, understand how it will behave on the system. If the system is stable, we are fine. Right? So as an attacker, your intention is to disrupt physical processes, not just the data. If you're changing data, if it doesn't make any adverse impact on the system, it's not working for you as an attacker. Your intention is to disrupt it so that device starts stopping or stop working, or maybe you inject malicious data or modify data in such a way it has a direct consequence on the data. Lines become overloaded and things like that. So disruption is one thing. On the other hand, since these systems are critical systems, we talk about the safety of the system. There's a potential safety hazards as well. What somebody trying to control your safety system of cyber physical system. So all the physical systems have their safety unit in this, right? Say in the worst case, if things go wrong, the safety system will be activated. It will cut down, trip down, disconnect it, right? So in worst case, it doesn't have harm on people because the people who are working there. What if there's a fire in a manufacturing unit, or the machine suddenly fell down and so on? And by the way, that always happens, not just from cybersecurity point of view, because of the mistakes, human mistakes and faults. Yeah. In big companies and so like manufacturing units, most probably. So sometimes their intention is also kind of harming and exploiting safety hazards. So what are the indicators we can think of in IT system generally? Regular checking off. So generally in IT system, what we do is there's always network security engineer or analyst looking at the packets. What packets are coming to the network, going out to the network, what their source address, where they are coming from, which protocol they are working, what the port number, what they are listening. Because sometimes you also wanted to know what data is going out from your network and through which ports. The port numbers will help you to understand what kind of applications or protocol, what kind of applications running in the system that's using protocol X. Yeah, if you see there's a 25 number open, port 25 is open in a system. 25 is connected to which one? Is it TCP? TCP or HTTP, I guess is 80. Yeah, so depending on port number, you can easily understand which protocol it's running, and then what could be the potential application which are based on these protocols. Okay. The other term is called indicator of attack. Indicators of attack help organizations detect and stop threats before they cause damage. On the other hand, indicator of compromise helps organization understand and mitigate the impact of attack. So as its name, indicator of attack. So what we are essentially try to understand based on whatever indicator we have. Yeah, let's say you are able to detect multiple indicators that seems to be unusual or start, they are not as they're supposed to be. Are these indicators giving some hint? What kind of attack it could be, right? So based on those indicators, can you profile the attack? Let's say attacker changed XYZ. Does it look like this is a DOS attack? If attacker did something that you see the indicators ABC has changed, does it look like man in the middle attack and so on? Yeah. Because once you understand what kind of attack it could be, it becomes much not easier, but in a way you become more powerful to understand what could go wrong. If you see there's a DOS attack on your system, you know what type of DOS attack it could be. Yeah. So you kind of start looking at all the possible things. If you don't know type of attack, it becomes difficult for you to understand what is the intention of the attacker, what they can target exactly. Yeah. So we are trying to detect indicators, but also try to profile the attack. Can I, based on the indicator, can I get a sense what type of attack it could be? If you can get some of this knowledge, even if not perfect, it can help you to mitigate in some way. Yeah. Or you better prepare. So it's a evidence-based patterns and anomalies in a system that indicate the presence and occurrence of cyber attack. So indicators, IoCs, malware injections, signatures, vulnerability exploitation, IP addresses, and so on. Indicators of attack, code execution, persistence, stealth, command and control, communication, lateral movement, data exploitation. What is stealth? Stealth the attack. So how these cyber attacks also been kind of evolved over the years. Now for security, again, security is not new. Yeah, security, particularly network security, is there since very long. And we've seen traditional attack like denial of service, man in the middle attack, and so on. And then for those kind of attack, people have created technology, mechanism, intrusion detection system, intrusion prevention system, and so on. So if you are, as an attacker, if you are attacking through any traditional attack, possibly we have IDs in place that will help us flagging things, saying this has changed, these parameters have changed. Seems to be something suspicious, and it can block packets or IP or source and so on. But then there could be steal the attack. Steal the attack in a way, it doesn't go in a way, in one go. So let's say your IDS is checking at payload, and let's say if the data in a packet, so like let's say the size of packet is 1500 bytes. You say the size is more than 1600, I will consider as a malicious packet, for example. Yeah. So what attacker will do, now attacker needs to inject 5000 bytes. What attacker will do, they will create a packet, and they'll keep the limit less than threshold. So the packet size will be less than 1600. So the IDS doesn't discard it, but then they send multiple packets. Now that data sit together. Once they get into the system, it becomes something else, target system and exploited. Right? Or sometimes if you are changing, modifying data, as we say, once you even if the data is modified a little bit, we want to pass this to the SCADA system, want to run algorithm, and wanted to see whether system has changed. Does it have any adverse impact or not? Right? Maybe for one packet, it doesn't show any impact. But if you keep modifying your data a little bit every time, might be you come to a point where you see there's an impact on the system, right? So those kind of attacks are called stealthy attack because they are not easy to detect. Even if you are running your algorithm, you see everything seems to be fine. Until suddenly you realize data has been changed a lot, and now this time you see sudden change in the system. Yeah. Attackers are able to attack system because they are smarter than the people who are defending the system. As simple as that. And they know that the solution, the technology, the tools that we have in place, they can't get into this using traditional attacks. So they are also become more smarter. They are developing techniques which can bypass the security system. Yeah. And if they are able to do so, whatever we have is useless. And then we need to think about how you improve those technology, or you build new technology and so on, new tools. Now there's another term is called tactist techniques and procedure. We call TTPs. TTPs help us understand what could go wrong, what are the different ways through this attacker can target the system, and what their intention, what they can do. So it's a tactist called why, techniques called how they can do it, and then procedures say what this attack about. So why understanding TTPs matter? We are talking about proactive threat detection. Yeah, so we talk about reactive versus proactive. Reactive is just you just wait something bad to happen, and then you react to it. Proactive is kind of planning yourself. You wanted to understand what could go wrong, and you prepare yourself before it hits your system. Improved incident response, which is part of your proactive thing. Enhanced threat hunting, strengthening cyber defense, and help understand adversary mindset, what exactly they are trying to do. This is the example, one of the example. So in order to collect TTPs, most of the time, the way we look at is look at the security reports, white papers, where people are describing attacks and scenarios and so on. And within those qualitative research, what is qualitative research? What is different when I say qualitative and quantitative? Yeah. So if you have data set, I'm applying algorithm X on data, yeah, collecting data, that's a quantitative research, right? You're playing with numbers, data. Qualitative, where you have more literature-based study, where you read papers, books, blogs, and so on. So what it helps, there's a number of reports, papers, and so on available on different case studies, different attacks that have been targeted in the past, or what researchers think might be can be targeted in the future. You look at all the reports and extract the content. That will help you to understand TTPs. For example, look at this report, which says we believe that compromised company was able, as the file name used in that malicious email attachment is probably able time access _update.exe, and we observed such a file being used to drop the same hyperbro sample as described in Avast blog post. Now from this sentence, we are trying to understand what is the TTP name, what kind of attack it look like when somebody is attaching an exe file to it, yeah, and then sending you email. What kind of attack it is? It's example of phishing. Yeah, when someone sends you email attaching exe file or malware, it's a clear example of phishing. So So by this sentence, you get a sense TTP is phishing. Element name, whatever is the file name or malware name and so on. Similarly, second sentence says host used with the downloaded Hyperbro is different, and DLL used to decode and execute the thumbs.db payload is exactly the same. Now TTP is de-obfuscated. It decode the files. If it is encoding, it's obfuscate. Yeah. TTP element is the name of that file or malware. Similarly, you go down, say a third sentence which says this technique is very similar to 3-pronged trident attack reported by Kaspersky researcher. Both thinprobe.exe, intgstat.exe, side loading host were previously used by Lucky Mouse to load Hyperbro. So you can see somebody is trying to load DLL files. So it's a DLL side loading, and then you can simply name what those files are. Note, however, that contrary to previous documented Hyperpro dropped employing such a trident, the payload here is not Shikata Gani encoded, but XOR encoded with value something. So in a sense, you get that somebody is trying to encode a source of obfuscated files. Element they are XORing, they're trying to XOR with something. CNC URL of the Hyperbro implant used with the Trojanized Able Desktop installer is this link, while CNC URL used by the one downloaded by the legitimate Able Desktop is this. So you get a sense this is application layer protocol you are talking about. These are the kind of maybe links. Now you have to also get whether these links are malicious or they, because if they are part of the document, most probably they are not malicious, because sometimes if those links are malicious, people just name it. If they're giving the exact links, they might not be malicious, but something else. In this case, it seems to be part of application protocol. Yeah, but maybe unintentionally, something that we don't usually expect somebody to send it, these files. Yeah. What happens if you try send exe file in your attachment? Have you tried it? Earlier you were able to send it, but now you're not. Because you are attaching an exe file, the systems, email systems are now designed in a way they start thinking you are phishing, you're trying to phish somebody, and they will not allow you to attach an exe file unless you compress it. Yeah, create .rar or .zip file, and then you can send it. Earlier we also used to able to download exe file directly. If you need to install a software, there's an exe file, you download it, install it. Now either you see those in the compressed form or you see their installer. Yeah, so you download the installer and then it will download binaries out of it. Okay, so this is the way how you, by looking at a report, now let's think about this is a 100-page report talking about different attacks on a topic. Right? What happened on smart grid in last 10 years? They're describing 10 different attacks in more detail. So this is how you derive TTPs, try understand what are the different techniques attacker have used, what kind of malware they have used, yeah, and what sort of malicious links and things they have used. So this will help you to gather that information out of it. And when you design your solution, you know what kind of possible or more popular attack that have been targeted in this sector. And you design your solutions to defend these attacks, particularly against these malwares. Yeah. So people are developing these kind of tools, automatic tools as well, where they can read PDF file, they can read your Word file and extract these indicators. Yeah, these TTPs. And once you have a table or a record of what are TTPs and what are the malicious elements, it becomes much easier for you to understand what to focus rather than talking about all types of attacks. Because you don't know what will come, but possibly you can learn what happened in the past. Yeah? If something happened in the past and you're not learning out of it and it repeats itself where you are part of it this time, it's really disappointing, isn't it? Because you know something has happened in the past and you did not prepare yourself. So these kind of techniques really help you to understand what are the case studies available, what sort of incidents happened in the past, what attacker did exactly, what type of attack they performed, what malware they have used, and then making sure we are prepared with those situations. So these are the practice that we generally used in this process. Then you can also look at how an attack has, what are the different resources the attacker can, these attacks have been targeted on. What was the cyber behaviors? Whether the data was exploited, whether they send data to control and command C and COC to servers, and so on. Did they compromise users, system admin, and so on? And you also look at times. So let's say time here, say second, minutes, hour, days, and months. Probably I can create this kind of graph to understand what happened in last 10 years, last 5 years. Yeah? What are the resources were targeted and when, and what were the cyber behavior, So this will help understand what are the overlaps, what are the big areas or repeated areas, what are the common attacks, and what does the practice look like. Maybe 2010 attack X was more popular, but then now 2025 we have something else. So how these attack patterns have been changed and evolved over the years. Yeah, so this one kind of graph can help you understand a lot of things. So it says cyber terrain can refer to the broad range of host network segments or other area where adversary may be operating. Example is Linux servers, Linux host, Windows servers, Windows host, Cisco routers, switches, Juniper routers, firewalls, email proxies, voice over IP. What is voice over IP? Yeah. What does it mean? Exactly. Now we don't realize it because there's so many applications now, but when these concepts came, we used to have something called Skype. Yeah, we also have Skype, but I don't know if you use it, Skype. But this was one of the early software. As I said, in order to connect to the internet, there was a dial-up connection. You need to connect your telephone lines to your computer, and you can connect only. Or you have to make calls. The people who are living abroad, they have to use international call, to talk to someone in another country. Then WhatsApp came, say you can use VoIP over IP. You'll connect it to the internet. It's quite cheap compared to your international calls, and that becomes so popular. Yeah, there were security issues at that point in time. There was no end-to-end encryption. But then you came WhatsApp. WhatsApp has changed everything. Yeah. Now people don't use traditional call. It just was WhatsApp everything. WhatsApp also said they are using now end-to-end encryption. What does it mean by end-to-end encryption? Yeah, so only the sender and recipient can see. In between, if someone captures it, they can't get the actual content. Now, what happened when I send a message? I send a text to you, let's say. What happened? What is the path? What is the route it follow? Where it goes? Does it come straight from here to there? Or what happened? Which server? Let's talk about text. Forget about WhatsApp at the moment. Let's talk about traditional text message, which is not internet or MMS, it's a SMS. What happened? Okay, so again, depending on, so I got a phone and I type a message to him. Okay, so it doesn't go like this. Obviously, it will follow the network, and right, because your mobile phone doesn't know he's sitting beside me, next to me. The message will still follow everything. So what happened is when you type or send an SMS, SMS follow the path of cellular network, right? So in cellular network, we have something called, so it's always a phone signal is low, yeah? Try connecting to tower. So you move here and there to see your signal strength going up or down. So your message content goes to something called base transceiver station, BTS, those towers, right? So in a region, you might have multiple towers. Let's say in this city, you might have multiple towers of particular service provider. Airtel might have their own tower, Reliance might have their own towers, and so on, right? Now that BTS sends those messages to something called base station, BSS, we call them BSS. BSS collect those from all the towers in that region. BSS then send forward it to something called message switching center. Now the role of the switching center is to understand whether messages need to be delivered within this region or it's for outside region. Same provider, another provider, right? Because I might have an Airtel SIM and I'm sending someone who has, let's say, Vodafone. So obviously you need to be connect to the other BT, yeah, or Vodafone at the end. So mobile switching center will look into where you want to send, who is the recipient, try search it, what is the location of that particular recipient, forward back to the BSS of that location, BSS send it to the particular BTS, and then BTS deliver to your mobile phone. Yeah. So that's the process generally being followed. It's a long process. Now, a few years back, there were charges to send SMS. I don't know if you remember, but there was charge like 1 rupee, 2 rupees, something like that, per SMS. Yeah. And those telecom companies will getting revenue out of it. But the fact is, they were not investing any extra amount to send you a message. Why? There's something called piggybacking. What is piggybacking? Exactly, yeah. So it's like when you are sending acknowledgement, you are just attaching that message with that. So anyway, they need to send acknowledgement to several control commands and so on within the network. They need to send those commands. So they're attaching your message apart to that, sending it, and then charging you 2 rupees or 1 rupees, whatever. Now when we have this kind of voice over IP, everything suddenly changed. There's no revenue exactly from it. We don't send messages anymore. Yeah? So technology can change anything that you haven't thought of. Those companies, they were thinking about that SMS will not change and it will be forever. And they were thinking about how they can improve their revenue. People will start using SMS in banks and so on. Now we use OTP, one-time password, and so on. Now those one-time passwords now follow internet routes, voice over IP, and other things. But traditionally, they were SMS. It comes to your mobile, and you look at okay. Yeah. So these companies are also generating revenue, collaborating with those companies. You can use my SMS service for whatever. Yeah. So the kind of a business model for them, which is gone now. Right. So voice over IP, connecting your device to internet, and that becomes a separate channel. Yeah. In internet, you can. But then again, it brings cybersecurity issues. That's why WhatsApp says we will offer end-to-end encryption. Yeah. So that only the sender and recipient can look at the. Why? What's the need of having end-to-end? Who is that nobody? occurs. Okay. So when we say traditional SMS, when your SMS goes to the follow that path, there are operators, telecom operators. They can look at your message. Now, sometime it happens is your mobile is switched off. I sent you a message, but your phone is switched off. What will happen? Stored somewhere. Yeah. So we have something called some registers, home location, no home. They are used for authentication. There's some storage there. I can't remember at this point. So your SMS goes there if it cannot deliver. In every few minutes, an hour, it always try whether this phone is switched on. If there's a path, then it will deliver it. Yeah, so they keep your message for maybe a day or two or something like that, or for a week. If your phone doesn't switch on, it does discard message. Right? But in this case, especially in the cases in the US where US government were forcing companies to get into the system extracting information because they were following certain people who seems to be criminal and XYZ. Right? And the government saying, I need to see their cell phone, their messages, who they are contacting, what they are sending, and so on. And that becomes a legal issue in a way. The company is saying, this is our policy, and then we cannot allow you. There was also a case in the US where the US government was trying to crack their iPhone. And there was a huge debate with Apple and FBI. It becomes kind of illegal. They were asking the key. So there's always a backdoor key. Yeah, they can always get into your phone and get to see what you're doing. So the Apple was saying we have a policy in place and we cannot allow anyone else apart from the owner of the device to look at this. Anyway, I guess the US government figured it out. They cracked it in some way, but Apple did not give them key. So that's one of the reasons. End-to-end encryption, we don't want that hassle. We're just simply saying message is encrypted, only the recipient and sender can see it. Now this is also helping in adversaries, attackers, to send messages which cannot be intercepted. Yeah, so it's kind of a headache for the government, not the other way. Okay, let's talk about this and then we'll have a break. Have you heard this cyber kill chain? So the cyber kill chain is a model that breaks down cyber attack into stages to help identify and stop it. Now, when something happened to us, we don't know how it's happened. So there are frameworks that came into the picture. People have started working towards it, saying, like the virus, any attack has its stages. And if we are able to understand these stages well, we might stop the attack sooner than the later. Yeah? So it's a security framework that helps organizations recognize, intercept, and prevent attacks. So it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 phases. The very first phase is reconnaissance, which simply says the attack do its research, identify what infrastructure it wants to target, how they are connected, and then decide which device or system or process it needs to target. So more or less planning. Yeah? Once you decide a target, what do? You weaponizing it. Weaponization. Saying pairing remote access malware with exploit into deliverable payloads. So you weaponize it. You load the weapon with it. Yeah? So depending on how you want to exploit it, that particular malware could be loaded. Then the delivery. Since you already selected the target, you already have particular malware, you just deliver it to the right place. Transmission of weapon to target, maybe email attachment, website, depending on what type of attack we are doing, USB drives. Once you deliver, the next phase is exploitation. Now this these steps might vary in terms of time from attack to attack. Some attacks might be executing immediately, some attacks take time. They're waiting for some conditions to occur and then they will trigger. Yeah. Exploitation, once delivered, weapon code is triggered, exploiting vulnerable application or system. Next is installation. Weapon install a backdoor on the target system, allowing persistent access. It creates backdoor entry. Command and control, outside server communicates with the weapon, providing hands-on keyboard access inside target system. Now it has created a backdoor entry, want to send data out of it through command and control server. Yeah, so it can create a backdoor entry, make a connection to the external server where it can send all the data. And then you got action on objectives. So depending on what is the objective or main goal of the attacker, attacker works to achieve the objective of the intrusion, which can include exfiltration. So you can send data out of organization, or destruction of data. They can destroy data, delete data, or intrusion of another target. Yeah, or they might select another target once they are done with this. So these are the general stages, 7 stages of an attack, particularly when we say APT-based attack. Now, there are a lot of research has been done around it to understand, is it possible we can kill the attack in phases? Is it possible for us to kill the attack in stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, stage 5, and so on? Possibly before it exploit. Rather than you detect something has happened, something bad happened to your system, is it possible for us to detect an abnormal patterns as soon as they hit the system? As soon as the attacker start changing its behavior in different phases, is it possible for us to detect and understand something is not right, and you just, yeah? So there are a lot of research tools are coming up with those kind of things where you can do this kind of analysis. Now, when we do with something called, do you know what is called sandbox? What is sandbox? Right. So it's an isolated environment where you can test these kind of security based. You can run the malware. It doesn't harm your actual system. Yeah. Have you heard about MITRE attack? MITRE attack framework. So it's a company in the US, and it has developed MITRE framework attack. So a couple of frameworks. It's really popular in cybersecurity. And they have come up with this attack matrix. I don't know if you can read it, but I can help you a bit. So it has several columns. I'll just read them. Initial access, execution, persistence, privilege acceleration, defense invasion, credential access, discovery, lateral movement, collection, exfiltration, command and control. So they believe, as we said, cyber kill chain, the attack executes in different phases. And in order to execute an attack, the attacker might use different strategies. So for an attack, what is the initial access? Where they will start from? What will be the initial target, for example? So the kind of number of options there. So based on the attack, they have compiled everything and then come up with this framework. They're saying, as an attacker, if they want to get initial access, they will do one of these things. If they need to execute attack, they will do one of these things. They need to send it out of the organization, they will follow one of these, right? So it becomes, it gives you an idea and becomes kind of multiple combination of it. As an attacker, you need to know, I mean, this is what they have compiled, but then you can build, you can think about how attacker thinks, yeah? So they might have one of these axes in order to start their attack. Executions, they might execute it from third party, from proxy executions, third party software. So it's a long list. So if you are working on, let's say, if you don't want attack to execute, some malware gets into the system, but before it hits its execution phase, we want to destroy it. So you know for the execution, what are the techniques attackers generally follow? What are different ways by which the malware can be executed? Yeah, if you can build a tool that can capture that instance and then immediately kill the attack, you can save it. Right? Yeah, just in order to do so, you need to do some lower level programming, understanding sometimes the flow of your system software codes and stuff. But then this is a really powerful tool to help you what attacker think and how attacker thinks. And if you need to stop one of those things, what are the different techniques you will work, develop solution and tools against these techniques to stop it. Okay, last thing, yeah. Okay, let's have a break. It's already